Before we begin tonight's journey, I want to gently ask one small thing. If you truly enjoy these calm historical stories I make, it would mean a lot if you left a like, and perhaps shared where you're watching from, and what time it is for you right now. It helps others discover these peaceful journeys, and I'm always humbled to see how far they travel across the world. Thank you. There is a land where green hills roll like waves frozen in time, where ancient stones stand sentinel over valleys that have witnessed countless generations come and go. This is Ireland, the Emerald Isle, where myth and history intertwine like the patterns in Celtic knotwork, each thread impossible to separate from the others. The air here carries the scent of peat smoke and wild heather, and in the gentle mist that so often shrouds these ancient landscapes, a boy is born who will become the greatest hero Ireland has ever known. His name is Fionn mac Cumhaill, Finn mac Cool in the English tongue, and his story begins in sorrow and exile, in darkness that will give way to extraordinary light. Picture, if you will, the Ireland of the 3rd century. Though time flows differently in these old tales, measured not by calendar years, but by the turning of seasons, by the cycles of planting and harvest, by the stories told around winter fires. This is a land of small kingdoms, each ruled by a local chieftain or petty king, all owing allegiance to the High King who sits at Tara, that sacred hill where Ireland's sovereignty is made manifest. The landscape is one of surpassing beauty. Dense oak forests cover much of the island, their canopies thick and green, their floors carpeted in moss and ferns. Rivers run clear and cold from the mountains, winding through valleys where cattle graze and small settlements cluster. Along the coasts, cliffs rise dramatically from the churning sea, and in sheltered bays, fishermen cast their nets as their fathers and grandfathers did before them. But this beauty conceals danger. The forests hide not just deer and boar, but also wolves, and according to the stories told in hushed voices, beings of an older world, the Sidhe, the fairy folk, who dwell in their hollow hills and sometimes meddle in the affairs of mortals. Ireland, in this age, is a place where the boundary between the seen and unseen worlds is thin, where magic is as real as the morning dew. Into this world, Fionn is born, though his birth is marked by tragedy. His father is Cumhaill, leader of the Fianna, that legendary band of warriors who serve the High King, who hunt and fight and keep the peace across Ireland's green kingdoms. The Fianna are more than mere soldiers. They are poets and athletes, storytellers and champions, bound by strict codes of honor and skill. But Cumhaill has made a powerful enemy. Gol MacMorna, a rival warrior, leads a faction against him. In the battle that follows, fought perhaps in a mist-shrouded valley, swords ringing against shields, warriors shouting their battle cries, Cumhaill falls. He is killed by Gol MacMorna, who takes leadership of the Fianna and becomes a man both feared and respected throughout Ireland. Fionn's mother is Muirna Munchayam, whose name means of the fair neck, a woman of great beauty and nobility. She is pregnant when Cumhaill dies, carrying a child who will never know his father, who will grow up in the shadow of his father's death and the threat it brings. For Gol MacMorna and his followers fear the son of Cumhaill. They know that when the boy grows to manhood, He may seek vengeance for his father's death, may challenge Goll's leadership of the Fianna. And so the order goes out. The child must not be allowed to live. But Muirn is not without protectors. When Fionn is born, in what season we cannot say, though let us imagine it is spring, when the world is renewed and hope returns to the land, she knows she cannot keep him safe. The boy's very existence is a threat to Goll's power, and Goll's reach is long. And so, in an act of desperate love, Muirn gives her infant son into the care of two women, Bodmall the druid and Liath Luachra the warrior woman. These two live apart from the kingdoms of men in the deep forests of Sliab Bladma, the Slive Bloom mountains that rise like ancient guardians over the heart of Ireland. Picture the scene, a moonlit night, the forest alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. Muirn, her heart breaking, places her baby in the arms of these two fierce, capable women. She knows she may never see him again, but she knows too that this is his only chance for survival. The women fade into the forest shadows, the child quiet in their arms, and Muirn returns to her own life, to the grief of widowhood and the fear of what may yet come. The two women, Bodmall and Liath Luachra, become the boy's mothers in all but blood. They name him Daimna, which means the sure one, or the certain one, though later he will gain the name by which history remembers him. They take him deep into the wilderness, far from the paths where men might travel, to a place where the trees grow thick and the streams run clear and cold. Here, in this green sanctuary, Fionn's childhood unfolds. The seasons turn in their eternal dance. Spring brings wildflowers and the return of migrating birds. Summer warms the forest, fills it with the drone of bees and the rustle of leaves in gentle breezes. Autumn paints the woods in copper and gold, and the women gather nuts and berries for the winter stores. Winter comes with its cold and darkness, but the small dwelling they have made is warm with fire, and the long nights are filled with stories. Bodmall teaches the boy the druid ways, the knowledge of herbs and healing, the observation of stars and seasons, the old wisdom that flows like an underground river beneath the surface of things. She shows him which plants can cure and which can kill, how to read the weather in the behavior of animals, how to listen to what the wind carries. Liath Luachra, whose name means grey of Luachair, teaches him the warrior arts. Despite his young age, she begins his training in the skills he will need to survive in a dangerous world. She shows him how to move silently through the forest, how to track deer by the faintest signs, how to use a spear and later a sword, how to run swiftly and leap high, how to swim in the cold rivers even when ice forms at their edges. The boy learns eagerly, hungrily. There is something in him, some spark of his father's greatness that makes him excel at everything he attempts. He is quick to learn, and quicker still to master what he has learned. By the time he is 7 years old, he can outrun the deer, can strike a target at impossible distances, can recite the genealogies and stories that Bodmall teaches him by firelight. But it is not a lonely childhood, despite the isolation. He has the love of his two foster mothers, fierce and protective. He has the companionship of the forest itself, the birds that nest in the trees, the hares that bound through the undergrowth, the salmon that leap in the streams. He learns to see the world as the Druids see it, as a living whole where everything is connected, where the smallest flower and the greatest mountain are part of one vast pattern. The years pass like clouds drifting across the Irish sky. The boy grows taller, stronger, more skilled. His hair is fair, catching the sunlight like gold when he runs through forest clearings. His eyes are sharp and bright, missing nothing. His movements become graceful and sure, like those of the wild creatures he lives among. As Fionn moves from childhood into youth, his world begins to expand beyond the safe confines of the forest sanctuary. He is perhaps 12 years old now, though still known as Dimna to those few who know of him at all. His foster mothers have taught him well. He is skilled with weapons, knowledgeable in the Druid lore, capable of surviving in the wilderness with nothing but his wits and his training. But they cannot keep him hidden forever. The world of men calls to him, whispers through the trees like wind through leaves. He begins to wonder about his parents, about his father, who died before he was born, about his mother, whom he cannot remember. He asks questions that Bodmal and Liath Luacra answer carefully, telling him pieces of the truth while withholding the danger it brings. One autumn day, when the forest is painted in shades of amber and rust, Fionn witnesses something that will mark a turning point in his young life. He is hunting alone, for his foster mothers now trust his skills enough to let him range far from their dwelling, when he sees a white deer moving through the trees. White animals are sacred in the old Irish traditions, touched by the other world, and to see one is to receive a sign from powers beyond mortal understanding. The deer moves with an otherworldly grace, seeming almost to float above the forest floor. Its antlers catch the slanting autumn light, and its eyes, when it turns to look at Fionn, are deep and knowing. Fionn raises his spear by instinct, trained hunter that he is, but something stops him. The deer doesn't flee. Instead, it stands watching him, and in that gaze, Fionn feels something stir within him, a sense of destiny, of being called toward something greater than the quiet life of the forest. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the white deer bounds away into the deeper woods, vanishing like morning mist. Fionn stands transfixed, his spear still raised, his heart beating fast with something he cannot name. It is not fear, not exactly, but a kind of recognition, as though he has seen not just a deer, but a message meant specifically for him. When he returns to the dwelling that evening, he tells Bodmal what he has seen. She is quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire that crackles on the hearth. Then she speaks, her voice soft, but weighted with knowledge. "The white deer appears when change is coming," she says, "when a path that has been hidden is about to reveal itself. You are growing, Daimne. Soon you will be too large for this small world we have made for you." Liath Luacra, mending a leather strap nearby, adds her own thought. He has the skills now to survive among men. Perhaps it is time. Time for what? Fionn does not yet fully understand. But in the days that follow, his foster mothers begin to teach him new things, not woodcraft or combat, but the ways of human society. They tell him about the structure of kingdoms and clans, about the laws that govern disputes, about honor and obligation, and the complex web of relationships that bind people together. And they tell him more about his father, about Cumhaill, the brave, the generous, the strong, about how he led the Fianna with wisdom and courage, how he was loved by his warriors and respected even by his enemies, about how he died fighting Gall MacMorna in a battle that changed the balance of power in Ireland. They tell him too about the danger he faces. Gall MacMorna still leads the Fianna. He still fears the son of Cumhaill, still seeks word of the boy who escaped his grasp all those years ago. If Fionn reveals himself, if he claims his father's name and legacy, he will become a target. Then I will make myself so skilled, Fionn says, with the confidence of youth, that no one can stand against me. Liath Luachra smiles, though there is sadness in it. Skill alone is not enough, boy. You must also be wise. You must know when to fight and when to wait, when to speak, and when to stay silent. As winter approaches, the forest settling into its deep sleep, Fionn's training intensifies. His foster mothers seem to sense that their time with him is growing short, that soon he will step out of their protection and into his destiny. They pour into him everything they know, every skill and scrap of wisdom they possess. He learns to compose poetry, for a warrior of the Fianna must be skilled with words as well as weapons. He learns the old stories of Lugh of the Long Arm, of the Dagda and his cauldron, of the great battles between the Tuatha De Danann and the Fomorians. He learns the genealogies of Ireland's noble families, the ancient laws that govern society, the signs that foretell weather and fortune. And always he trains his body, running through the winter cold until his lungs burn, swimming in streams so icy they turn his skin red, practicing with spear and sword until his movements are as natural as breathing. He learns to hunt in silence, to track in darkness, to move through the world like a ghost when necessary, or like a storm when battle calls. The winter passes, as all winters do. Spring returns to the forest with its gentle greening, its bird song and budding life. And with the spring comes a visitor, the first person from outside Fionn's small world to find the hidden dwelling in the depths of Sliab Blatma. He is an old warrior, grey-bearded and weary, who stumbles into their clearing one evening as the sun is setting. Liath Luachra's hand goes to her weapon, but the man raises his hands in peace. "I mean no harm," he says, his voice rough with exhaustion. "I am lost, and I saw your fire. I ask only for a night's shelter and perhaps some food, and I will be on my way with the morning." They take him in, for hospitality is sacred, and feed him and give him a place by the fire. As he eats, he tells them he is travelling from Munster to Leinster, carrying messages between the kingdoms. He speaks of the world beyond the forest, of High King Con at Tara, of battles and alliances, of the Fianna and their doings. Fionn listens hungrily. This is the first outsider he has spoken with since his infancy, the first voice from the wider world. The old warrior, warming to his audience, tells stories of great hunts and legendary warriors, of the feats required to join the Fianna, of the respect and prestige such warriors command. and he speaks of Gall MacMorna, who leads the Fianna now, who is getting older but still formidable, still the greatest warrior in Ireland, some say, though always his voice carries a note of qualification when he says this, as though he wonders if it is truly so. When the old warrior finally sleeps, Bodmal speaks quietly to Fionn. "The world is calling you," she says. "I hear it in the questions you did not ask, in the way you leaned forward at every word. Soon you will leave us, and when you do, you must be ready." "I am ready," Fionn says, with the certainty of youth. Bodmal smiles sadly. "Perhaps you are, but ready or not, the time is coming. The white deer has spoken." Spring deepens into summer, and with the warmth comes a restlessness in Fionn's heart. He is 14 now, tall for his age, his body lean and strong from years of forest training. The dwelling that once seemed spacious now feels confining, like a cloak that has been outgrown. He ranges farther in his hunting, staying away for days at a time, testing his skills against the wild places of Ireland. On one of these journeys, he comes upon a group of boys playing hurley near a settlement at the edge of the forest. Hurley is the ancient Irish sport, fierce and fast, played with wooden sticks and a hard ball, requiring speed and strength and courage. Fionn, hidden at the forest's edge, watches them play. They are skilled, these boys, clearly well trained. But as Fionn watches, he thinks he could do better. The thought comes not from arrogance, but from simple observation. He can see the patterns in their play, can anticipate where the ball will go, can imagine himself moving through them like wind through grass. Without quite deciding to, he steps from the forest into the clearing. The boys stop their game, staring at this stranger who has appeared from nowhere, fair-haired, dressed in simple forest garb, carrying a spear with the easy confidence of one who knows how to use it. "May I play?" Fionn asks. The boys exchange glances. One of them, clearly their leader, looks Fionn up and down. "We play hard here, stranger. No mercy for newcomers." Fionn smiles. "I ask for none." They give him a hurley stick, explain the rules briefly, and resume their game. Within minutes, it is clear that something extraordinary is happening. Fionn moves among them like a different order of being, faster, more agile, more aware. He anticipates every move, intercepts passes that should be impossible to catch, scores again and again. The boys begin to play rougher, trying to knock him down, to slow him with force since they cannot match his skill. But Fionn simply adjusts, his forest training allowing him to dodge and weave, to remain always just out of reach. He is not cruel about his superiority. He plays with joy, with the pure pleasure of movement and competition, but his dominance is absolute. Finally, the leader of the boys calls a halt. "What is your name, stranger? You play like no one I've ever seen." Fionn hesitates. He knows he should not reveal his true name. Not yet. But neither does he want to lie completely. "I am called Dimne," he says. "Well, Dimne," the boy says, respect mingling with frustration in his voice. "You are welcome to play with us any time, though I warn you, The older boys will hear of this, and they will want to test you themselves. This begins a pattern that will repeat itself in the months to come. Fionn returns to play with the boys, and word spreads of his extraordinary skill. Soon he is playing against older youths, then young men, then the finest hurley players in the region. No one can match him. His speed and strength, honed by years in the wilderness, surpass anything the settled folk can produce. But with this fame comes danger. People begin to notice the fair-haired youth who appears from the forest, who defeats all challengers, who seems to possess almost superhuman abilities. They begin to ask questions. Who is he? Where does he come from? Why have they never heard of him before? One day, after a particularly impressive victory, an old man approaches Fionn. He looks at the youth with eyes that have seen much, eyes that miss little. "Your hair," the old man says softly, "catches the light like gold. We have a word for such fairness. Fionn. You should be called Fionn, not Dimne." And so the name is given, not by his mothers or his kin, but by a stranger who simply sees what is true. The fair one, Fionn. The name spreads, and soon everyone knows him by it. When he returns to the forest dwelling, Bodmal and Liath Luachra hear him called by this new name, and exchange knowing looks. "The white deer has led you to your true name," Bodmal says, "and a name has power. To be known is to step into the world, to become visible." She is right. Within days, visitors begin to arrive at settlements near the forest, asking about the fair-haired youth of extraordinary skill. Some are merely curious, others have a sharper interest, a purpose that makes Bodmal and Liath Luachra uneasy. Finally, the news they have long feared arrives. A warrior in the service of Gol MacMorna has heard tales of a youth matching the description of Cumhaill's son. He is coming to investigate, to see if the boy who was supposed to have died in infancy has somehow survived. "You must leave," Bodmal tells Fionn that night, her voice heavy with sorrow. "It is no longer safe for you here, and our presence puts you at risk. If Gol's men find you with us, they will know for certain who you are." "Where will I go?" Fionn asks, though he is not afraid, only curious. "Into the world," Liath Luachra says, "to learn what we cannot teach you, to become what you are meant to become." They spend that final night telling him everything he needs to know. About the great warrior poets who might train him. About the places of power across Ireland where he might seek wisdom. About the need for caution and the importance of disguise. About when to reveal himself and when to remain hidden. And they tell him about his father's treasure, the crane bag, a magical container holding tools of power and wisdom hidden away after Cumhaill's death. Someday, they say, when he is ready, he must seek it out and claim what is rightfully his. As dawn breaks over the forest, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Fionn prepares to leave the only home he has ever known. He embraces his foster mothers, these fierce women who raised him and kept him safe, who made him what he is. "I will return," he promises. "Perhaps," Bodmal says, "but you will not be the same boy who left. The world will change you, as it changes all who walk through it." Remember what we have taught you. Remember that true strength lies not just in the arm, but in the heart and mind. Liath Luacra gives him a final gift, a spear she has crafted herself, balanced perfectly for his hand, its point sharp enough to pierce mail. "This will serve you well," she says, "but remember, it is the warrior who makes the weapon dangerous, not the weapon that makes the warrior." And so Fionn mac Cumhaill, no longer Daemne, no longer a hidden child, steps out of the forest and into his destiny. He is 15 years old, fair-haired and bright-eyed, skilled beyond his years, carrying nothing but his spear and the wisdom his foster mothers have given him. The morning mist swirls around him as he descends from the mountains, and ahead lies all of Ireland, green and ancient, beautiful and dangerous, waiting for the hero who will become its greatest champion. Fionn travels south and east from the Slieve Bloom Mountains, moving through a landscape of surpassing beauty. The summer sun warms the rolling hills, turns the rivers to ribbons of silver winding through green valleys. He passes ancient ring forts where clans make their homes, sees cattle grazing in rich meadows, walks through oak forests older than memory. He is cautious in these early days of his journey, avoiding the main paths where warriors travel, staying clear of the larger settlements where questions might be asked. He hunts for his food, sleeps in the shelter of trees or caves, moves like a ghost through the land. But he is also learning, watching how people live, listening to conversations in the markets he observes from a distance, understanding the rhythms and patterns of this wider world. His journey brings him eventually to the River Boyne, that sacred waterway that flows through the heart of Ireland's ancient power. Here, according to Bodmall's instructions, he is to seek out a poet named Finnegas, who has spent 7 years waiting by the river for a very specific purpose. He finds the old poet's dwelling near a pool where the river runs deep and dark, overarched by hazel trees. It is a simple place, a small round house with a thatched roof, a fire pit nearby, the tools of a fisherman arranged carefully on the bank. Finnegas himself is ancient, his beard white as snow, his eyes still sharp and bright despite his years. Fionn approaches respectfully, in the manner Bodmall taught him. "Master Poet, I am seeking knowledge. Might you accept a student?" Finnegas looks at this fair-haired youth, studies him with an intensity that seems to see beyond surface appearances. "What is your name, boy?" Fionn hesitates, then decides on partial truth. "I am called Fionn." Something flickers in the old poet's eyes, recognition perhaps, or merely interest. "Fionn, the fair one, and what knowledge do you seek?" "Whatever wisdom you are willing to share, master." Finnegas is silent for a long moment, his gaze moving from Fionn to the deep pool, then back again. Finally, he nods. "Very well. You may stay, but you must help me with a task I have been pursuing for 7 years. I am waiting for a certain fish, the salmon of knowledge that dwells in this pool." He explains the legend. Long ago, 9 hazel trees grew beside this sacred pool, and their nuts fell into the water. A salmon ate the nuts and gained all the knowledge in the world. Whoever eats this salmon will receive that knowledge. Finnegas has been told in prophecy that someone named Finnegas will catch and eat the salmon, gaining its wisdom. I help you fish, Fionn says, and in return, you teach me the poet's art? Just so. And so begins a period of Fionn's life that will transform him utterly. He learns from Finnegas the craft of poetry, not just the making of verses, but the deeper art, the way words can capture truth and beauty, can preserve memory, can wield power in their own right. He learns the ancient stories, the genealogies, the laws and traditions that hold Irish society together. By day, they fish. Finnegas has tried every method, every lure, every charm he knows. The salmon is clever, ancient, and elusive. Sometimes they see it in the depths, larger than any normal salmon, its scales shimmering with colors that seem to shift and change. But it will not take the bait. The seasons turn. Summer fades to autumn, autumn to winter. Fionn grows in knowledge and skill. Finnegas is a demanding teacher, accepting nothing less than perfection in the recitation of the old tales, in the composition of new verses, in the understanding of the complex rules that govern Irish poetry. Spring returns, painting the riverbanks with wildflowers. And one morning, as mist rises from the water and the world is soft and grey and hushed, the salmon takes the hook. Finnegas, his hands trembling with excitement after 7 years of waiting, pulls the great fish from the water. It is magnificent, larger than his arm, its scales shimmering with that otherworldly iridescence, its eyes deep and knowing. At last, Finnegas breathes. At last. He tells Fionn to cook the salmon, but with strict instructions. You must not eat any of it, not the smallest bite. This fish is meant for me, and me alone. Cook it carefully, and call me when it is ready. Fionn agrees and sets about preparing the fish. He builds up the fire, prepares a spit, places the salmon upon it to cook. As it roasts, its smell fills the air. Not just the smell of cooking fish, but something more. Something that seems to carry hints of knowledge itself, of wisdom waiting to be consumed. Fionn tends the fish carefully, turning the spit to cook it evenly. But as he does so, a blister rises on the salmon's skin. Without thinking, acting on pure instinct, Fionn presses his thumb against the blister to flatten it. The heat burns him. And again, without thinking, he puts his thumb in his mouth to cool the burn. In that instant, everything changes. Knowledge floods into Fionn like a river breaking through a dam. He sees patterns he never saw before, understands connections that were hidden, gains insight into the nature of things that no amount of study could have taught him. The wisdom of the salmon, earned from those 9 hazelnuts that contained all knowledge, flows into him. When Finnegas returns and looks at Fionn's face, he knows immediately what has happened. The boy's eyes are different now, deeper, as though they see layers of reality invisible to others. You ate the salmon, Finnegas says, not accusing, simply stating fact. I burned my thumb on it, Fionn explains, showing the mark. I put it in my mouth without thinking. I'm sorry, Master. I did not mean to disobey you. Finnegas is quiet for a long time, studying his student. Then, slowly, he begins to smile. A sad smile, but genuine. The prophecy said that someone named Finnegas would eat the salmon and gain its knowledge. I thought it meant me. I am Finnegas. But you are Fionn. The names are so similar. Perhaps I misunderstood. Or perhaps this is how fate works, using one to prepare the way for another. He tells Fionn to eat the rest of the salmon, since the knowledge has already passed to him. And as Fionn eats, more wisdom flows into him. Not just facts and information, but understanding, the ability to see truth, to perceive what is hidden, to know things others cannot know. From this day forward, Fionn will possess what comes to be called the thumb of knowledge. Whenever he needs wisdom or insight, he need only put his thumb in his mouth, and knowledge will come to him. Warnings of danger, solutions to puzzles, understanding of mysteries. Finnegas, though he has lost the prize he sought for 7 years, bears Fionn no ill will. Indeed, he seems almost relieved, as though a burden has been lifted. I am an old man, he tells Fionn. I sought wisdom for myself, for my own glory, perhaps. But you will use this knowledge for something greater. I see that now. The salmon has chosen well, with the wisdom of the salmon flowing through him and the blessing of Finnegas. Fionn continues his journey across Ireland. But he is changed now, and not just by the knowledge he has gained. He is 16 years old, no longer a boy, but not quite a man, standing on the threshold of his destiny. The knowledge he gained from the salmon guides him, whispering insights when he needs them. He begins to understand the deeper patterns of the world around him, how societies function, how power moves through the kingdoms, where danger lies and where opportunity waits. But wisdom alone is not enough. He needs allies, training, and eventually he must confront the truth of who he is and claim his father's legacy. His travels bring him to various warrior schools scattered across Ireland, where young men train in the arts of combat. At each school, Fionn presents himself simply as a youth seeking to learn, never revealing his true identity. And at each school, he astonishes his teachers with his natural ability. One master teaches him the salmon leap, a technique of jumping over an opponent's shield while striking downward. Fionn masters it in a single afternoon. Another teaches the art of fighting with 2 spears simultaneously. Again, Fionn excels, his movements becoming a dance of deadly grace. He learns to fight with sword and shield, with bare hands, with any weapon or no weapon at all. But he also learns poetry and music, for a true warrior of the Fianna must be skilled in the arts of peace as well as war. He learns to play the harp, his fingers finding the strings with the same precision they bring to weapons. He composes verses that are both beautiful and technically perfect, following all the complex rules of Irish prosody. Between these periods of training, Fionn lives by hunting and occasionally by serving as a hired warrior, always moving, never staying long enough for his identity to be discovered. He helps farmers defend against raiders. He hunts wolves that threaten livestock. He solves disputes with wisdom beyond his years, sometimes using his thumb of knowledge to perceive the truth when people lie. Stories begin to spread across Ireland of a fair-haired youth of extraordinary ability, a warrior who cannot be defeated, a poet whose verses move the heart, a solver of riddles and mysteries. Some begin to wonder if this might be the lost son of Cumhaill, but Gol MacMorna, hearing these rumours, dismisses them. Surely Cumhaill's son, if he survived at all, would have revealed himself by now, would have challenged for his father's position. As Fionn approaches his 17th year, he begins to feel the pull toward his destiny more strongly. The knowledge from the salmon tells him that he cannot hide forever, that the time is approaching when he must reveal himself and claim what is rightfully his. But first, he must prove himself worthy, not just skilled, but wise enough to lead, just enough to command respect. One autumn, his wanderings bring him to the hill of Tara, seat of Ireland's High King. It is Samhain, the festival that marks the end of harvest and the beginning of winter, when the boundary between the mortal world and the other world grows thin. Tara is ablaze with celebration, bonfires burning, people feasting, poets reciting, warriors competing in contests of skill. But there is an edge of fear beneath the celebration. For 9 years running, a being called Eilean the Burner has come to Tara at Samhain. This creature of the cedar plays music so beautiful that all who hear it fall into an enchanted sleep, and then he breathes fire upon the wooden halls of Tara, burning them before disappearing back into the other world. No warrior has been able to stop him, for all fall asleep at his music. Fionn, moving anonymously through the crowds, hears of this curse. His thumb of knowledge tells him that this is his moment, the opportunity he has been waiting for. If he can defeat Eilean when Ireland's greatest warriors have failed, he will prove himself worthy of recognition and honor. He seeks audience with Conn, the High King, a man of dignity and wisdom, grey-haired now but still strong. Fionn does not reveal his true identity, but offers to keep watch and defend Tara against Eilean the Burner. Conn looks at this youth skeptically. Many warriors have tried, boy, and all have failed. What makes you think you can succeed where they could not? Give me leave to try, Fionn says simply. If I fail, you have lost nothing. If I succeed, Tara will be free of this curse. There is something in the youth's eyes, a clarity and confidence that makes Conn agree. Very well. May the gods grant you better fortune than those who have tried before. As night falls and the festivities continue, Fionn prepares. An old warrior approaches him, one who remembers Cumhaill, though he does not yet recognize the son. He gives Fionn a magic spear, one that will prevent enchanted sleep if its point is held against the forehead. This belonged to your... The man begins, then catches himself. This is a weapon of power. Use it well. When Eilean comes, as he always comes, floating through the air, with his otherworldly music preceding him, all of Tara falls into enchanted sleep. Warriors slump at their posts. The High King himself slumps on his throne. The music is indeed beautiful, haunting melodies that speak of ancient sorrows and forgotten joys, of the lands beyond mortal ken. But Fionn, holding the magic spear's point to his forehead, remains awake. The music washes over him, tries to drag him down into slumber, but a spear's power keeps him alert. He sees Aelin approaching, a being of terrible beauty, wreathed in strange light, preparing to breathe his fire upon the sleeping halls. Fionn throws his cloak over himself and waits. When Aelin opens his mouth to release the fire, Fionn throws the cloak over the flames, smothering them before they can spread. Then, while Aelin is surprised and off balance, Fionn hurls his spear with all his strength and skill. The spear flies true, piercing Aelin's heart. The creature of the Sidi falls, his enchantments dying with him. As he strikes the ground, he begins to fade, returning to the other world from which he came, never to trouble Tara again. The enchanted sleep lifts. Warriors wake, confused, then amazed to see the dawn breaking, and Tara still standing, unburned. Fionn stands alone in the courtyard, the magic spear in his hand, calm and unharmed. Con comes to him, wonder in his eyes. You have done what no warrior of Ireland could do. Ask what reward you will, and if it is in my power, you shall have it. Fionn takes a deep breath. This is the moment. The time for hiding is past. I ask only for what is rightfully mine, he says, his voice clear and strong. I am Fionn mac Cumhaill, son of Cumhaill, who led the Fianna. I claim my father's position as leader of these warriors. A murmur runs through the assembled crowd. Goll mac Morna steps forward, his hand on his sword. He is older now, but still formidable, still dangerous. For a moment, it seems violence will erupt. But Con raises his hand. Fionn mac Cumhaill has proven himself worthy this night, and justice demands that what was taken be restored. Goll mac Morna, you have led the Fianna well these many years, but the son has the right to his father's place. The moment hangs like a blade suspended in air. Goll mac Morna and Fionn mac Cumhaill face each other in the great hall of Tara, the High King watching, the assembled warriors of Ireland holding their breath. These are the two men whose fates have been intertwined since before Fionn was born. Goll, who killed Cumhaill and took leadership of the Fianna. Fionn, who has spent his whole life training to reclaim what was lost. Goll is perhaps 50 years old now, his beard streaked with grey, but his body still powerful, his eyes hard with the experience of decades of warfare and leadership. Fionn is barely 17, fair-haired and bright-eyed, young enough to be Goll's son. And yet there is something in Fionn's bearing, in the way he stands with quiet confidence that marks him as exceptional. For a long moment, neither speaks. The hall is silent, save for the crackling of the fires in their bronze braziers, the soft breathing of hundreds of warriors watching this confrontation that could tear the Fianna apart. Then Goll mac Morna does something unexpected. He steps forward and extends his hand. Your father was a great warrior, Goll says, his voice gruff but sincere. I killed him in fair combat, in a battle that had to be fought, but I never denied his greatness. If you are even half the man Cumhaill was, you will lead the Fianna well. Fionn looks at the extended hand, and for a moment his face is unreadable. Everyone knows he has cause for vengeance. Goll killed his father, forced him into hiding, threatened his very life. By the laws of honor, Fionn would be justified in refusing the hand, in demanding combat. But Fionn has the wisdom of the salmon. He understands that vengeance, while satisfying, would divide the Fianna when they need unity. He sees a deeper truth. Goll, despite being his father's killer, has led the Fianna honorably. And Goll's gesture now, acknowledging Fionn's right, shows a nobility that must be recognized. Fionn takes Goll's hand. My father is dead, and no revenge will bring him back. But the Fianna lives, and Ireland needs it to be strong. If you will serve with me, Goll MacMorna, I would be honored to have you as my chief warrior. A collective exhale runs through the hall. High King Con smiles, seeing in this young man not just strength and skill, but the wisdom to lead. The warriors of the Fianna, who might have been torn between loyalty to Goll and recognition of Fionn's rights, now see a path forward. And so Fionn mac Cumhaill becomes captain of the Fianna at an age when most warriors are just beginning their service. But his youth is not the disadvantage it might seem. The older warriors respect his skill, proven in countless contests, and finally in the defeat of Ailinn. They respect his wisdom, shown in his reconciliation with Goll. And they respect his heritage, for Cumhall's memory still burns bright among those who served with him. The requirements for joining the Fianna are stringent, designed to ensure that only the finest warriors and poets join their ranks. A man must know the 12 books of poetry. He must be able to compose verse himself. He must endure being buried to the waist while defending himself with only a shield against 9 warriors throwing spears. He must run through the forest, pursued by all the Fianna. And if he is caught, or if a branch breaks under his foot, or if a twig cracks in his hand, he has failed. He must be able to leap over a branch as high as his forehead, and duck under one as low as his knee, all while running at full speed. He must be able to pull a thorn from his foot without slowing down. Fionn himself has far exceeded all these requirements, and under his leadership, the Fianna flourishes. They range across Ireland, hunting and training, keeping the peace, serving the High King in whatever capacity is needed. They hunt the great boar and the swift deer. They compete in contests of poetry and music. They train constantly, pushing themselves to ever greater heights of skill. But Fionn's leadership is marked by more than just martial excellence. He is known for his wisdom and his justice. When disputes arise, and they always do among proud warriors, he settles them fairly, sometimes using his thumb of knowledge to perceive the truth, but more often relying on careful thought and genuine understanding of human nature. He is generous with those who serve him, remembering his own days of poverty and exile. He shares the spoils of the hunt equally, never keeping more than his fair share. He listens to the counsel of others, even those younger or less experienced than himself, understanding that wisdom can come from unexpected sources. The years pass in a rhythm of seasons. Spring brings them to the hills for the calving season, protecting farmers' herds from wolves and raiders. Summer finds them ranging widely, hunting and training. Autumn is the time of great hunts, pursuing deer and boar through the forests. Winter brings them to the halls of various kings, where they feast and tell stories, maintaining the bonds between the Fianna and Ireland's rulers. Fionn himself continues to grow in skill and knowledge. He uses his thumb of knowledge sparingly, understanding that wisdom too easily gained loses its value. Instead, he learns through experience, through observation, through the endless patience of paying attention to the world around him. He also begins to gather around him a core of exceptional warriors who will become legendary in their own right. There is Diarmuid Ua Dwybne, beautiful and brave, whose love for Fionn will be tested in ways neither can foresee. There is Oisin, who will become not just a warrior, but one of Ireland's greatest poets. There is Oscar, fierce in battle, but gentle in peace. There is Conan Maol, brave but contentious, whose sharp tongue provides balance to Fionn's measured wisdom. Together, they make the Fianna into something approaching myth, a band of warriors whose skill and honor become the standard against which all others are measured. Stories of their exploits spread across Ireland and beyond. When the Fianna hunts a boar, it is no ordinary hunt, but an adventure worthy of song. When they fight, it is with a combination of strength and skill that seems almost superhuman. But Fionn remains grounded, remembering his time in the forest with Bodmal and Liath Luacra, remembering the lessons they taught him about humility and wisdom. He knows that strength without wisdom leads to tyranny, that skill without compassion leads to cruelty. He tries to embody the best qualities of both the warrior and the druid, both the poet and the hunter. The seasons turn, and Fionn moves from his late teens into his 20s. He has achieved what seemed impossible, reclaimed his father's position, won the respect of his father's killer, led the Fianna to new heights of excellence. But his story is far from over. Indeed, in many ways, it is just beginning. The autumn sun hangs low over Ireland, painting the heather-covered hills in shades of purple and gold. Fionn is now in his prime, perhaps 25 years old, at the height of his powers as both warrior and leader. The Fianna has become the finest band of warriors Ireland has ever known, and their captain's reputation spreads far beyond the shores of his homeland. On this particular autumn day, Fionn and the Fianna are engaged in their favourite pursuit, the hunt. They are tracking a white stag through the hills of Munster, that southern kingdom of mist and mountain. The stag is enormous, its antlers like the branches of a great tree, its coat pure white like winter snow. To see such a creature is rare. To hunt it successfully is an honor that will be remembered in song. The hounds run ahead, their baying echoing across the valleys. Behind them come the warriors of the Fianna, moving with the practiced ease of men who have spent their lives in pursuit of fleet prey. Fionn runs at their head, his fair hair streaming behind him, his eyes bright with the joy of the chase. But this is no ordinary hunt. As they pursue the stag deeper into the wilderness, into regions where few mortals venture, Fionn feels something shift in the air around them. The light takes on a different quality, softer and more golden. The sounds of the forest seem both closer and more distant. They are approaching one of those thin places where the mortal world touches the other world. The white stag leads them to a valley Fionn has never seen before, though he thought he knew every corner of Munster. A stream runs through it, clear as crystal, and on its banks grows grass so green it seems almost to glow. At the valley's far end stands a dwelling, not a simple roundhouse like those common in Ireland, but a structure of surpassing beauty, its walls seeming to be made of silver light, its roof thatched with what might be threads of gold. The stag vanishes into the dwelling, and the Fianna slows, uncertain. They have been taught since childhood that the Cedar, the fairy folk, are not to be trifled with. To enter their dwellings uninvited is to court danger and enchantment. But Fionn, with the courage that has made him legendary, steps forward. "I will enter," he says. "The rest of you wait here. If I do not return by sunset, go back to Tara and tell the High King what has happened." Inside the dwelling, Fionn finds himself in a hall larger than should be possible given the structure's outer dimensions. The white stag is nowhere to be seen. Instead, seated at a table laden with food and drink, is a woman of such extraordinary beauty that Fionn must catch his breath. Her hair is dark as a raven's wing, flowing over shoulders pale as milk. Her eyes hold depths like forest pools. When she smiles, it is like the sun breaking through clouds. "Welcome, Fionn mac Cumhaill," she says, her voice like music. "I am Sadb, and I have brought you here for a purpose." She tells him her story. She is one of the Tuatha de Danann, those ancient divine people who ruled Ireland before the coming of mortals. She has angered a druid named Fionn, the Dark Man, who transformed her into a deer as punishment. Only within this dwelling, protected by its enchantments, can she take her true form. The white stag was her messenger, sent to bring Fionn to her. "Why me?" Fionn asks, though he is already beginning to understand. "Because you are pure of heart," Sadb says. "Because you lead the Fianna with justice and wisdom. Because you might have the power to break my curse." Fionn said that only if I can find a mortal man who loves me freely, without enchantment, and who brings me to live among mortals under their protection, will the curse be broken. Fionn looks at her, and even though he knows this could be a trap, knows that the Cedar are dangerous and their gifts often come with hidden costs, he also sees something genuine in her eyes. Yeah, and he feels his heart stirring in a way it never has before. They talk through the afternoon and into the evening. Sadb is not just beautiful, but wise, knowledgeable in the old lore, able to match Fionn in conversation about poetry and philosophy. They discuss the nature of courage and justice, the relationship between mortals and the other world, the meaning of love and loyalty. By the time the sun sets, Fionn has made his decision. "I will take you to my dwelling on the hill of Allen," he tells her. "You will live under the protection of the Fianna, and I will defend you against any who might harm you." When he emerges from the otherworldly dwelling with Sadb at his side, the Fianna stares in wonder. But they ask no questions, for they trust their captain's judgment. They return to the hill of Allen, where Fionn has established his stronghold, and there Sadb lives in safety. The curse, as predicted, is broken by Fionn's freely given protection and growing love. Sadb can now move in the mortal world without fear of transformation. She and Fionn are married in the spring, when the world is renewed and hope blooms like hawthorn blossoms. For a time, And in the telling of old tales, exact time is always uncertain, flowing differently than the rigid measure of years. They are happy. Fionn has found in Sardba not just a wife, but a companion of the spirit, someone who understands both his mortal responsibilities and his connection to deeper, older powers. She is pregnant with their child, and Fionn looks forward to being a father, to giving his son or daughter the loving upbringing he himself was denied. But happiness in old stories is always fragile, always threatened. Fionn, the dark man who cursed Sardba, has not forgotten her. He broods in his dark places, plotting revenge. One day, Fionn and the Fianna are called away to defend Ireland's shores against raiders from across the sea. It is their duty, and Fionn cannot refuse. He leaves Sardba at a hill of Allen, protected by guards and the fort's strong walls. But Fionn is cunning. He waits until Fionn is far away, then approaches the hill of Allen in Fionn's form, using dark magic to disguise himself. The guards see their captain returning early and opened the gates. Sardba, seeing what appears to be her husband, rushes out to greet him. Too late, she realizes the deception. Fionn strikes her with his druid rod, speaking words of power and malice. The transformation takes her swiftly, her form shifting back into that of a deer, her human speech lost. As a deer, she flees into the forest, driven by Fion's magic, unable to stay in the place of safety Fionn had created for her. When Fionn returns and learns what has happened, his grief is like a wound that cannot heal. For 7 years, he searches for Sardba. The Fianna ranges across every corner of Ireland, looking in every valley and forest, seeking some trace of the deer that was once Fionn's wife. They neglect their other duties, so consumed is Fionn with his quest. But Sardba cannot be found. The other world has reclaimed her, and Fion's magic is too strong to be easily broken. Finally, on a hunt in the forests near Ben Bulben, the hounds discover a young boy living wild in the woods, perhaps 7 years old, naked and feral, knowing no human speech. But when Fionn sees him, his heart leaps. The boy has his eyes, his fair hair, and something in his bearing that speaks of Sardba. This is Oisin, whose name means little deer, son of Fionn and Sardba, born during her captivity and raised in the wilderness. Through gestures and fragments of memory, the boy conveys that a deer protected him, cared for him, until one day the dark man came again and drove her away. The boy tried to follow, but his human form could not match the deer's speed. Fionn takes his son into the Fianna, teaches him human speech and the ways of warriors and poets. Oisin will grow to become one of Ireland's greatest bards, the one whose poems preserve many of the tales of Fionn and the Fianna for future generations. But Fionn never forgets Sardba. In quiet moments, he still searches for her with his eyes, still hopes that somehow, someday, the curse might be broken and she might return to him. This sorrow, carried with dignity and grace, deepens his wisdom and makes him more compassionate toward others' suffering. Time moves differently in legend than in life. Years flow past like water over stones, wearing them smooth, but leaving their essential shape intact. Fionn leads the Fianna through seasons and cycles, winters of feasting and storytelling, springs of renewal and hunting, summers of ranging wide across Ireland's green kingdoms, autumns of great hunts and preparations for the cold to come. His son Oisin grows from that wild boy of the forest into a warrior of great skill and, more importantly, into a poet whose verses capture the beauty and sorrow of a world with crystalline clarity. Father and son become companions, though Fionn can never look at Oisin without remembering Sadba, without feeling both joy and grief intermingled like threads in a tapestry. The Fianna itself has become an institution now, its reputation spreading far beyond Ireland's shores. Warriors come from distant lands, hoping to join, to prove themselves worthy of this legendary band. The tests remain stringent. Fionn will not lower the standards that make the Fianna exceptional. But those who succeed in joining find themselves part of something larger than themselves, a brotherhood bound by shared excellence and common purpose. Fionn himself continues to lead by example. Though he is aging, perhaps in his 40s now, which in these times makes him no longer young, he remains formidable. His fair hair is touched with silver at the temples, his face marked by the weather and the years. But his eyes are as sharp as ever, and his strength has not diminished. He uses his thumb of knowledge more sparingly now, having learned that wisdom too easily obtained loses something essential. Instead, he relies on experience, on the accumulated understanding of decades of leadership, on the patient observation of human nature that has taught him how people think and act and can be guided toward their better selves. One of his greatest challenges comes not from external enemies, but from within the Fianna itself. A young warrior named Diarmuid Ua Dwybne has joined their ranks, beautiful beyond the common measure, skilled with weapons, brave and honorable. Fionn loves him like a son, trusts him completely, sees in him a future leader of the Fianna. But Diarmuid bears a mark upon his forehead, a love spot placed there by a woman of the Side. Any woman who sees it falls instantly and irrevocably in love with him. Diarmuid usually keeps it covered, understanding the danger it poses. Fionn, in his later years, takes another wife, Grain, daughter of High King Cormac. She is young and beautiful, spirited and strong-willed. The marriage is arranged for political reasons, to strengthen bonds between the Fianna and the High King. But on the wedding feast night, Gran sees Diarmuid's love spot uncovered for just a moment. The effect is immediate and catastrophic. Despite her betrothal to Fionn, despite every reason to resist, Gran falls hopelessly in love with Diarmuid. In her desperation, she places a guise upon him, a magical obligation that cannot be refused without dishonor, compelling him to run away with her. Diarmuid is caught between two impossibilities. To refuse the geese is to be dishonored, to become oathbreaker, something no warrior of the Fianna can accept. But to comply is to betray Fionn, the man he loves and respects above all others, the leader who has shown him nothing but kindness and trust. After agonizing deliberation, Diarmuid chooses the only path honor leaves open. He flees with Grain, but he does not touch her. does not consummate the relationship she desires. He will obey the letter of the geese while refusing its spirit, remaining technically loyal to Fionn even while betraying him, in fact. The pursuit that follows lasts for years. Fionn and the Fianna track Diarmuid and Grain across Ireland, from mountains to valleys, from forest to seashore. Always Diarmuid stays one step ahead, using his skill and knowledge of the land to evade capture. He leaves signs for Fionn, uncooked salmon, unbroken bread, signals that he has not truly betrayed his captain, has not made Grain his wife. But Fionn's heart is hard with betrayal. He has been humiliated before all Ireland, his young bride stolen away on their wedding night. His pride is wounded, and pride can make even the wisest men unforgiving. The chase becomes legendary. The old warrior pursuing the young, the betrayed leader tracking the beloved follower, honor and shame, and love and anger all tangled together like briars. Other warriors of the Fianna are caught between loyalty to their captain and sympathy for Diarmuid, who is clearly trying to maintain honor in an impossible situation. Oisin, Fionn's son, speaks for Diarmuid, trying to make his father see reason. He did not want this father. The gaze gave him no choice, and he has not truly made her his wife. But Fionn will not listen, or cannot. The wound is too deep. Finally, after years of pursuit, peace is brokered. The High King Cormac intervenes, pointing out that Diarmuid has acted with as much honor as the situation allowed. Grainne is released from her father's claim on her. She can marry whom she chooses. And Fionn must accept that she has chosen Diarmuid. Fionn agrees to the peace, but his heart remains unforgiving. On the surface, he accepts Diarmuid back into the Fianna, but the warmth that was between them is gone, replaced by something cold and watchful. Time passes. Diarmuid and Grain settle into domestic life, have children, build a home. The passion that drove their flight fades into something quieter, contentment perhaps, or simply acceptance. Diarmuid grows older, his legendary beauty fading into mere handsomeness, his warrior's body marked by scars and the inevitable wearing of years. Then comes the hunt for the boar of Ben Bulben, a magical creature, fierce and cunning, that has been terrorizing the region. The Fianna gathers for this great hunt, and Fionn invites Diarmuid to join them, speaking with apparent friendship, as though the old betrayal is forgotten. But it is not forgotten. Fionn knows, his thumb of knowledge has told him, or perhaps simply his understanding of old prophecies, that Diarmuid is fated to be killed by a boar. And the boar of Ben Bulben is no ordinary beast, but a creature of destiny. The hunt unfolds on a misty morning, the hills shrouded in grey, visibility poor. The boar is enormous, its tusks sharp as spears, its rage palpable. It charges through the hunters, scattering them. Diarmuid faces it alone, his spear ready. The combat is brief and brutal. Diarmuid's spear finds the boar's heart, but not before the boar's tusk opens a terrible wound in Diarmuid's side. The boar falls dead, and Diarmuid sinks to the ground beside it, his life bleeding away onto the heather. Fionn arrives to find Diarmuid dying, and here comes the crucial moment, the choice that will define Fionn's character for all time. Fionn has the power to save Diarmuid. He can carry water in his hands, and water carried by Fionn has healing properties. It is within his power to preserve the life of this man who betrayed him. Diarmuid looks up at Fionn, pain and understanding in his eyes. "For the love you once bore me," he whispers, "bring me water." Fionn stands frozen, divided against himself. Part of him, the part that still loves Diarmuid, that remembers their companionship and brotherhood, wants to save him. But another part, the part that holds the grudge, that remembers the humiliation and betrayal, wants to let him die. He goes to the stream and cups water in his hands. He starts back toward Diarmuid. But then he remembers Grain, remembers his wedding night, remembers years of pursuit and shame. His fingers loosen. The water spills away. Oisin, arriving at the scene, sees what is happening and cries out, "Father, you cannot! Whatever he did, he does not deserve this." Shamed by his son's words, Fionn goes back to the stream, cups water again, returns more quickly. But again, memory overcomes him. Again, the water slips through his fingers. A third time, Oisin begs him. A third time, Fionn goes to the stream. But by the time he returns with water still held in his cupped hands, determined now to save Diarmuid despite everything, it is too late. Diarmuid has breathed his last, his eyes fixed on the grey sky above, his blood staining the heather red. The death of Diarmuid marks a turning point in Fionn's story, though perhaps not in the way one might expect. He does not become cruel or tyrannical. That is not his nature. But something hardens in him, some last softness worn away by the weight of choice and consequence. He has let a man die whom he could have saved, and this knowledge sits heavy in his heart. The Fianna continues under his leadership, but the golden years are behind them now. The warriors who fought alongside Fionn in his youth are aging or gone. A new generation joins the ranks, men who know Fionn only as the legendary captain, not as the young man who once ran through forests with the joy of pure movement. Oisin, now a man in his prime, has become one of Ireland's greatest poets. His verses preserve the tales of the Fianna's exploits, but they also capture something elegiac, a sense of time passing and glory fading. He sings of hunts that will never come again, of warriors now resting in their burial mounds, of a world that is slowly changing in ways both subtle and profound. One day, Oisin meets a woman of the Sidhe, Niamh of the golden hair, who rides a white horse across the waves and invites him to come with her to Tir na Nog, the land of the young, where time moves differently, and age does not touch those who dwell there. Fionn watches his son ride away across the water, not knowing if he will ever see him again. It is another loss, another farewell, though gentler than Diarmuid's death. Oisin promises to return, but Fionn knows the promises made to the other world are not always kept in the way we expect. The seasons continue their eternal turning. Fionn is an old man now, though still vigorous, still capable. His hair is white as winter snow, his face deeply lined, but his eyes remain clear and his mind sharp. The thumb of knowledge is still his, though he rarely needs it anymore. Experience has taught him nearly everything the salmon's wisdom might reveal. He has become a living legend, a figure from a heroic age that seems to be passing. The young warriors who join the Fianna now do not remember the Ireland of Fionn's youth, when magic was more common, when the boundary with the other world was thinner. They are more practical, more focused on the techniques of warfare, and less on the poetry and philosophy that Fionn holds dear. High King Cormac mac Airt, who ruled Ireland for Fionn's prime years, has passed away, and new kings rise and fall, each a little less magnificent than the last, or so it seems to old men remembering golden days. The world is changing, becoming more solid somehow, less enchanted. But Fionn adapts. He has always been adaptable, always able to see what the moment requires and become what is needed. He trains the new warriors with patience, passing on not just techniques but wisdom, trying to ensure that the Fianna will continue after he is gone. He tells stories around winter fires, tales of his youth, of the salmon of knowledge, of Sadab and the years of searching, of great hunts and desperate battles, of Diarmuid and the choices that haunt us long after they are made. The young warriors listen, sometimes with genuine interest, sometimes with the polite attention of those who humour an old man's reminiscences. Goll mac Morna, Fionn's old enemy, who became his loyal servant, has long since died, honoured and mourned. Others of the original Fianna have followed him into the quiet earth. Fionn finds himself increasingly surrounded by the young, the last link to an age that is slipping into memory and legend. But he does not despair. He has lived long enough to understand that all things pass, that change is the only constant. The Ireland he knew as a boy, forests deep and full of magic, the cedar active and visible, heroes walking the earth, that Ireland is fading. But something new is being born, and Fionn is wise enough not to condemn it, simply because it is different from what he knew. He continues to hunt, though less frequently now. The old joy is still there when he runs through the hills with the hounds baying ahead, when he feels the wind in his hair and sees the deer bounding through the heather. These moments connect him to his youth, to the boy who learned tracking from Lyath Luachra, who first tasted the salmon's wisdom by the river Boyne. Sometimes, in the quiet of evening, Fionn thinks about the prophecies and visions that have come to him over the years through his thumb of knowledge. He has seen hints of Ireland's future, of new peoples coming across the sea, bringing new gods, of the old ways fading but not entirely dying, of stories being written down in books rather than preserved in memory alone. He wonders what will remain of the Fianna after he is gone, what stories will be told of their deeds. Will people remember him as he truly was, or will he become a figure of pure legend, exaggerated and simplified, losing the complexity of his actual life? But these thoughts do not trouble him overmuch. He has lived a full life, more than full, extraordinary by any measure. He has known love and loss, triumph and tragedy, joy and sorrow. He has led Ireland's greatest warriors, defeated enemies, human and supernatural, gained wisdom from magical sources, and hard-won experience. Most importantly, he has tried, not always successfully, but genuinely, to live with honor and wisdom, to be worthy of the position he holds, to serve Ireland and its people to the best of his considerable abilities. As he sits by the fire in the great hall on the hill of Allen, watching the flames dance and listening to the wind whistle around the walls, Fionn mac Cumhaill feels something like contentment. Not happiness. Too much sorrow has touched his life for simple happiness. But contentment. Acceptance. The peace that comes from knowing you have lived fully, even if imperfectly. The stories of Fionn's final days are wrapped in mystery and uncertainty, varying in the telling. Some say he died in battle, as a warrior should, fighting to defend Ireland against invaders. Others claim he and his most faithful warriors fell into an enchanted sleep in a cave beneath the hill of Allen, waiting to wake when Ireland needs them most. Still others whisper that he never died at all, that he wanders still through the wild places of Ireland, watching over the land he loved, invisible to mortal eyes but present nonetheless, a guardian in twilight, a protector from the borders between worlds. Let us imagine his ending not as a single moment, but as a gradual fading, like the light at day's end, slowly giving way to star-filled darkness. The Fianna continues to exist after Fionn, but it changes, becomes something different, loses the character that made it legendary. Within a generation or two of his passing, however that passing occurred, the Fianna itself fades from history into legend. But before that ending, there are final moments worth remembering. Picture Fionn in his last years, walking the hills of Ireland one final time. He moves slowly now, leaning on a staff, but his eyes still take in everything. The flight of birds overhead, the tracks of deer in soft earth, the first frost touching the heather, the way light falls on distant mountains. He visits the places that have mattered to him. The hill of Allen, where he established his stronghold. The river Boyne, where he first tasted the salmon's wisdom. The forests of Sliab Bladma, where Bodmal and Leath Luachra raised him in safety and taught him the skills that made him what he became. Both his foster mothers are long dead, but their dwelling remains, or at least the memory of it. Fionn stands where the small roundhouse once stood, remembering the child he was, the fears and hopes of those distant days. How simple it seemed then. Grow strong, avenge his father, claim his birthright. How much more complex the reality proved to be. He thinks of Sardab, lost to him these many decades, transformed back into a deer and driven away by dark magic. Sometimes he still dreams of her, still sees her face in the moment before she realized Theodoric's deception. In his dreams, he saves her, breaks the curse, undoes the sorrow. But he wakes to the reality that some losses cannot be recovered, some wounds never fully heal. He thinks of Diarmuid, dying on the heather of Ben Bulben, and of his own choices in that moment, going to the stream, letting the water fall, allowing pride and old hurt to overcome love and mercy. This memory remains fresh, even after all these years, a reminder that even the wisest can fail, that knowledge is not the same as virtue, that understanding what is right does not always mean we will do it. He thinks of Oisin, riding away to Tir na Nog, the land of the young. Will his son ever return? The other world's time is not mortal time. What seems like a day, there might be decades here, or the reverse. Fionn may never see his son again, may never know what became of him in that timeless land beyond the waves. But he also remembers joy, the pure delight of running through forests in his youth, his body strong and swift, capable of feats that seemed almost magical. The intellectual pleasure of matching wits with poets and druids, the satisfaction of solving riddles and unraveling mysteries, the warmth of companionship around winter fires, stories being told and retold, laughter rising into the rafters of great halls. He remembers the loyalty of the men who followed him, who trusted his leadership even in desperate circumstances. He remembers Gall MacMorna's hand extended in reconciliation, the beginning of a peace that should have been impossible, but endured for decades. He remembers small kindnesses given and received, moments of connection that meant more than great deeds. As his final days approach, however they come, whenever they come, Fionn spends his time trying to ensure that what he has learned will not be lost. He speaks with the young warriors, trying to convey not just techniques, but wisdom, not just how to fight, but why and when. He tells stories, knowing that stories preserve truth in ways that direct instruction cannot. Remember, he tells them, that strength without wisdom leads to tyranny, that courage without compassion leads to cruelty, that skill without honor leads to empty victory. He speaks of the examined life, of the importance of understanding yourself, your motivations, your weaknesses. The thumb of knowledge has taught me much, he says, but experience has taught me more. And the hardest knowledge to gain is knowledge of yourself, your own heart, your own failures, your own capacity for both good and ill. The young warriors listen with respect, though Fionn wonders how much truly penetrates. Wisdom cannot be given, it must be earned. He can only offer his insights and hope that some seeds will take root, will grow in their own time. On what may be his final night, though who can say for certain when the final night arrives, Fionn sits alone by the fire in his hall. The flames dance and crack, throwing shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind carries the scent of autumn, of leaves turning, and the earth preparing for winter's sleep. He places his thumb in his mouth one last time, seeking the knowledge that has guided him through so many trials. And what he perceives is not frightening, but peaceful, a sense of completion, of a story reaching its natural end. The wheel has turned, the cycle is complete. What began in a forest hideaway, with two fierce women raising a hidden child, has encompassed a full life of adventure and achievement, sorrow and joy, failure and success. Fionn understands that his story will continue after he is gone, but it will be transformed. Memory becomes legend, legend becomes myth. Future generations will tell tales of Fionn mac Cumhaill, but they will not know the man he actually was, his doubts and fears, his quiet moments of uncertainty, his very human struggles with pride and grief and love. But perhaps that is as it should be. Legends serve a purpose different from history. They inspire and teach and preserve something essential about human nature and human possibility. If his story, transformed by time and telling, can give courage to someone facing their own trials, can show them that even heroes struggle with difficult choices, can remind them that wisdom comes not from certainty, but from honest wrestling with complexity, then the loss of historical accuracy is a price worth paying. The fire burns low, the night deepens, and Fionn mac Cumhaill, captain of the Fianna, son of Cumhaill, husband of Sadba, father of Oisin, student of Finnegas, warrior and poet, wise man and flawed human being, settles into whatever ending awaits him. Perhaps it is death, simple and final, his body returning to the Irish earth he loved and defended. Perhaps it is enchanted sleep, waiting in darkness for the call that will wake him when Ireland needs her greatest hero once more. Perhaps it is transformation into something else entirely. A guardian spirit, a presence in the hills, a memory that refuses to fade. But whatever form his ending takes, what remains is the legacy of a life fully lived, of choices made with as much wisdom and courage as he could muster, of service given to something larger than himself. Centuries pass. The Ireland that Fionn knew transforms beyond recognition. The old gods fade into folklore. Christianity spreads across the green hills, bringing new stories, new values, new ways of understanding the world. The Fianna itself becomes a distant memory, a tale told to children, increasingly fantastic with each retelling. But the stories of Fionn mac Cumhaill endure. Monks, writing in monastery scriptoriums, preserve the old tales in new forms, committing to vellum and ink what was once held only in memory. They Christianize some elements. Fionn becomes less magical, more human, but the essential character remains. The fair-haired warrior of extraordinary skill and wisdom, the leader who held the loyalty of legendary heroes, the man who gained knowledge from a magical salmon and used it in service to Ireland. The tales spread beyond Ireland's shores. Travellers carry them to Scotland, where Fionn becomes Fingal, his legend intertwining with local traditions. The stories reach the continent, where medieval listeners thrill to accounts of the Fianna's hunts and battles, of magical transformations and quests into the other world. Each generation finds something new in the old tales. In times of invasion and oppression, Fionn becomes a symbol of resistance, the hero who will return when Ireland needs him most, sleeping beneath the hill of Allen with his warriors, waiting for the call. In times of peace and prosperity, he becomes an example of leadership and wisdom, the captain who balanced strength with justice, courage with compassion. Poets especially cherish the stories of Fionn and the Fianna. The tradition of Fenian poetry, those verses attributed to Oisin and other members of the Fianna, becomes one of Ireland's great literary treasures. These poems capture something essential about the Irish relationship with landscape and memory, with heroism and loss, with the bittersweet nature of glory that fades and beauty that cannot last. When Ireland faces its darkest hours, conquest, famine, diaspora, the stories of Fionn provide a link to an earlier time, to an Ireland that was free and strong, where heroes walked the hills and magic still touched the world. The tales become a form of resistance, a way of preserving Irish identity when political and economic forces seek to erase it. And in quieter times, the stories serve different purposes. They teach children about courage and wisdom, about the importance of keeping your word, about the complexity of leadership and the cost of vengeance. They remind adults that life is always a mix of joy and sorrow, that even heroes fail sometimes, that wisdom comes from experience and often through suffering. Modern Ireland still holds Fionn in its collective memory. The places associated with him, the Hill of Allen, Ben Bulben, the River Boyne, remain pilgrimage sites for those interested in myth and legend. His name appears in poems and songs, in novels and plays, in paintings and sculptures. Scholars debate the historical basis of the stories. Was there a real Fionn mac Cumhaill? If so, when did he live? What details in the tales might reflect actual events, and what is pure fiction? These questions may never be fully answered, and perhaps that is appropriate. Fionn exists in that liminal space between history and myth, real enough to matter, but legendary enough to inspire. The story of the salmon of knowledge continues to resonate. It speaks to the idea that wisdom can come suddenly, unexpectedly, that sometimes understanding arrives not through long study, but through a moment of grace or accident. The image of Fionn placing his thumb in his mouth to gain knowledge has become iconic, a symbol of seeking wisdom beyond ordinary means. The tragedy of Sadba, transformed into a deer and lost despite Fionn's protection, touches on themes that remain relevant. The limits of our ability to protect those we love, the way that malice can destroy even the strongest bonds, the persistence of hope even in the face of loss. The fact that their son Oisin emerged from the wilderness and became a great poet suggests that even from sorrow, beauty can arise. The Diarmuid and Grayan story, with its themes of forbidden love, divided loyalty, and the destructive power of pride, has been retold countless times in various forms. It speaks to something universal in human experience, the conflict between love and honor, the way that choices made in passion can haunt us for years, the question of whether forgiveness is possible and what it costs. But perhaps what endures most powerfully is the image of Fionn as leader. In an age that often reduces leadership to the exercise of power, Fionn's story reminds us that true leadership involves wisdom and justice, that a leader must sometimes make difficult choices, that the best leaders serve something larger than themselves. His reconciliation with Gall MacMorna, his father's killer, shows a capacity to put collective good above personal vengeance. His generosity with his warriors, his insistence on high standards combined with fair treatment, his willingness to listen to counsel. These paint a picture of leadership as something earned through character rather than simply claimed through strength. Yet the stories also show his flaws. His treatment of Diarmuid reveals how pride can corrupt even the wisest, how old wounds can fester, how the desire for revenge can overcome better judgment. In this honesty about Fionn's failures, the tales become more powerful, not less. A perfect hero is unreachable, unrelatable. A hero who struggles with the same temptations we all face, who sometimes fails but continues to try to be better. Such a hero inspires in a deeper way. The setting of the stories, ancient Ireland with its green hills and deep forests, its magic and mystery, has become almost as important as the hero himself. The tales evoke a landscape that still exists in some form, places where you can stand and imagine Fionn running through the heather, pursuing the white stag, sitting by a stream contemplating the nature of wisdom. This connection between story and place is part of what keeps the legends alive. You can visit Ben Bulben and imagine the final hunt, the boar's charge, Diarmuid's fall. You can stand by the Boyne and picture young Fionn cooking the salmon, gaining knowledge in a moment of accident and destiny. The landscape holds the stories, and the stories give meaning to the landscape. As evening settles over the modern world, as it settled over ancient Ireland in the days when Fionn mac Cumhaill walked the earth, there is something that remains constant. The sky still turns the same shades of amber and rose and deepening purple. The stars still wheel in their ancient patterns. The wind still carries the scent of heather and the sea. And somewhere in the collective memory of a culture, in the stories told and retold, Fionn endures, not as he was in life. That man is lost to time, known only to himself and those who loved him, but as something larger, a symbol, an ideal, a reminder of what human beings might become if we cultivate both strength and wisdom, if we serve something larger than ourselves, if we strive to live with honor even when we fail. The details of his life have been transformed by centuries of retelling. The magical elements have been amplified in some versions, diminished in others. The timelines have been confused, events rearranged, new stories added, and old ones forgotten. This is the nature of legend. It changes to meet the needs of each age, each teller, each listener. But certain truths remain constant in all the tellings. Fionn was raised in hiding, but did not hide himself when it was time to claim his destiny. He faced his father's killer, not with vengeance, but with wisdom, choosing reconciliation over revenge. He gained knowledge through an accident, but used it with purpose and restraint. He loved and lost, but didn't let loss make him bitter. He led with strength, but also with justice. He made mistakes, terrible mistakes, like allowing Diarmuid to die. But these failures made him human, rather than diminishing his heroism. For modern listeners, these stories offer something increasingly rare, a connection to a deeper past, to a time when heroes were not manufactured by marketing, but emerged from the needs and aspirations of a people. Fionn represents something essential about Irish identity, the love of poetry and learning alongside physical courage, the appreciation for both the practical and the mystical, the ability to honor the past while adapting to the present. The image of Fionn and his warriors asleep beneath the hill of Allen, waiting to wake when Ireland needs them, is more than just a charming legend. It speaks to the idea that what is best in a culture never truly dies, but only sleeps, waiting for the right moment to return. In dark times, this is not mere fantasy, but necessary hope. The belief that heroism is not extinct, that wisdom can return, that the values we cherish might yet prevail. But the stories also remind us that heroes were never perfect, that the old days were not purely golden, that even in the age of legends, people struggled with the same questions we struggle with now. How do we balance justice and mercy? How do we lead others while remaining true to ourselves? How do we handle betrayal? How do we face loss? How do we grow old with grace? What legacy do we leave behind? Fionn's answer to these questions was never simple or perfect. He struggled, he failed, he learned. He tried to be better than he was, to grow in wisdom as well as strength. And perhaps that is the most valuable lesson the legends teach. That the examined life, the life lived with intention and reflection, is itself a kind of heroism, even when it doesn't lead to perfect outcomes. As night falls and stars emerge in the darkening sky, we might imagine Fionn as the stories portray him in those final moments. An old man by a fire, contemplating his life, understanding that his story will continue in forms he cannot control, accepting that this is as it should be. The man may end, but the story goes on, changing and adapting, but carrying forward something essential. In every generation, someone discovers the tales of Fionn mac Cumhaill for the first time and feels that spark of recognition. Here is a hero worth remembering, flawed but noble, strong but wise, human in his struggles but transcendent in his aspirations. The stories continue to speak because they speak of things that do not change: courage and wisdom, love and loss, honor and its costs, the endless human struggle to become better than we are. And so Fionn lives on, not in the literal sense of immortality, but in the way that matters most, in the stories that preserve his memory, in the values he embodied, in the questions his life raises. He walks still through the green hills of Ireland, not as a ghost or a sleeping warrior, but as a presence in the imagination, a standard by which other heroes are measured, a reminder of what we might become. The fair-haired boy who hid in the forests of Sliab Bladma became the captain of the Fianna, became the lover of the woman transformed into a deer, became the father who watched his son ride away to the land of the young, became the leader who made choices both wise and terrible, became the old man who had seen too much and still tried to teach what he had learned. And in becoming all these things, in living a full and complex life, in struggling with the eternal questions of how to be good and strong and wise, Fionn mac Cumhaill became something more, a story that endures, a legend that lives, a quiet echo of ancient heroism that still resonates in the modern heart. May we, too, find the courage to examine our lives with honesty. May we seek wisdom even when it comes through accident or suffering. May we lead with justice tempered by mercy. May we face our inevitable losses with dignity and grace. May we remember that strength without wisdom leads nowhere good, but wisdom without strength accomplishes nothing. And may we remember, when we need it most, that heroes are not beings of perfection, but people who try, who fail, who try again, who serve something larger than themselves, and in that service find meaning that transcends their individual lives. The twilight deepens into full night. The stars wheel overhead, the same stars that shone on Fionn's hunts through ancient forests, the same stars that will shine long after our own stories have faded into legend or oblivion. And in that continuity, the eternal sky, the turning seasons, the green hills of Ireland, the stories that connect us to those who came before, there is comfort and challenge both. The examined life awaits. The stories remain. The quiet echo of Fionn mac Cumhaill still sounds, if we listen, calling us to be brave and wise, strong and just, human in our struggles, and heroic in our aspirations. And somewhere, whether beneath the hill of Allen or in the mist-covered spaces between memory and imagination, The fair-haired warrior sleeps or watches, his story complete, but never finished, his legend alive as long as there are those who tell it, as long as there are those who need to believe that wisdom and courage still matter, that heroes can emerge from humble origins, that even in an age of wonders passing away, glory remains possible for those willing to pursue it with integrity and heart.